Search visible impacts of climate change leading up to 2010.
101 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the hottest day ever recorded.
700 people are now feared dead after the strongest ever recorded day's rainfall in India's history.
Now it's official, the past year has been the driest in Melbourne's history.
The desert is advancing at the phenomenal rate of 3 miles every year.
Dozens of Antarctic ice shelves collapsing faster than anyone predicted.
18 countries are underwater and 1.5 million people are affected.
List climate change, major events up to the present day.
I think one's got to be very careful about attaching a particular event to global warming. But nevertheless, the intensity of hurricanes is related to surface sea temperature. So increased intensity of hurricanes is associated with global warming.
It is our fault. After years of debate, some of the world's top scientists have concluded...
Unequivocal is the word they use. Human activity is
contributing to changes in our Earth's climate, and that issue is no longer up to debate.
In Andermatt, they've covered a glacier with a special protective sheet to reduce its summer melt.
One way I do my bit for the environment is turning to 30 with Ariel.
This is offsetting all those flights that I take, that I have to for my job.
David Cameron even wears recycled shoes made from old fireman's trousers.
Despite all of the efforts to control pollution and its effects on our climate, the level of greenhouse gas emissions has reached a record high and shows no signs of being reversed.
Despite the Kyoto Treaty and all the talk of reducing emissions of carbon dioxide, levels of this key greenhouse gas are rising faster than ever.
6:30 a.m. on a cool autumn morning, and Alvin's heading off to work, searching for more oil. Ironically, the oil infrastructure off the coast of New Orleans suffered major damage during the hurricane. But Shell moved fast to carry out repairs, and just 9 months later, the rigs are online and everyone's back at work.
Oil was formed when ancient plant life in the oceans absorbed energy from the ancient sun. As these plants died, they settled on the ocean floor, along with the dead bodies of tons and tons of ocean creatures. Over the millennia, temperatures increased, and the organic matter was gradually cooked until the sun's energy was stored inside oil. 150 million years later, Shell's geologists analyze where the oil might be, then drill 3 miles down into the seabed to collect samples.
Human history is littered with the corpses of people who had stuff worth stealing. Animals. Water. Shiny things. Fertile land. Spices.
Nutmeg slice. Tea?
But when it came to stuff worth pinching, one continent had it all. Ivory, copper, cotton, rubber, wood, tin, gold, diamonds, and people. As cheap energy, slaves were unbeatable until a less troublesome energy source was discovered and a new era began. Human numbers increased 5 times over, and with each person wanting more and more stuff, oil became the resource worth fighting for all around the world.
went to war in Iraq? According to former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, it's simple. Three-letter answer, not WMD, it's OIL.
I am saddened that it's politically inconvenient to acknowledge what everyone knows, that the Iraq war is largely about oil.
You might read the ex-chairman of Shell that said over the weekend that oil could hit over $150 a barrel as world production begins to peak. Not really good news for a country whose entire economy, not to mention its entire way of life, is based on cheap oil.
زينة عمود الحرب زينة رجعنا أنا والحجية جينا ورجعنا بعدين جينا كنا عائلتنا ورجعونا بعدين جينا أنا ونورة وعدنان وطوفانا ورحنا يعني وجينا بعدين أجرنا لنا بيت. كنا عند مطي نركب نلعب مع ركبنا بنلعب مع فوقينا الصعد ضلوا بروح مع بنركب بس من طبة أمريكا يعني ما بنصدق يعني من طبة أمريكا بالليل احنا هربنا نخاف من عتبة كتير قام مشتو والله جينا الصبح لقينا مفتوح. أبوي أحسن كان واحد بالعراق كلياته كان بيروح الفجر الصبح بيروح يصلي بالجامع ويجي هسه قام من طبة أمريكا قام ما في هوب قام مسطوه وقتلوه الصبح كان الصبح مقتول. أتمنى يعني أبوي من مات لما قتلوه يعني ما بصدق أنا مكتله.
Throughout our history, the deal was we left the world in a better place than we found it. That was progress. The wheel, the rule of law, penicillin. It was our covenant to our children and grandchildren. My children weren't angry with me for breaking the covenant. They were too busy trying to stay alive to waste energy on blame, trying to negotiate their way through food riots and refugee camps and the collapse of society. But I think my grandchildren would have been angry had they survived into adulthood.
Lots of ideas have tried to take over the world, but there's only one winner. 3,000 adverts bombard us every day, telling us we'll be happier, more attractive and with better skin if only we buy their products. Together, they create within us an insatiable desire to buy more and more stuff. Americans have been advertised at longest, and they now each consume twice as much energy as a European, 9 times more than a Chinese person, 15 times more than an Indian, and 50 times more than someone from Kenya. If all 6.5 billion people here on Earth consume like Europeans or Japanese, we'd need 2 more planets worth of resources. If everyone consumed like Americans, Australians and Canadians, we'd need another 4. And in 2040 or so, when there's about 9 billion of us, we'll need 2 more again. Capitalism's only goal is ever-expanding growth. But ever-expanding growth on just the one not-expanding planet is impossible. The current economic system is disastrous, not just for the planet, but for most people too. 400 years of capitalism has allowed the richest 1% to take 40% for themselves, leaving just 1% for the poorest half. But anyone wanting to live differently is thwarted at every turn. With profit the only measuring stick, destroying the planet is written into the system, and runaway climate change is not very surprising.
climate scientists can estimate how much of the remaining fossil fuels we can safely burn. This amount is called the global cap. Under this proposal, the world's governments would make a binding international agreement detailing how to distribute the global cap. The earlier the start date, the greater the chance of not triggering runaway climate change. The total global emissions for the first year, say 2012, will be set at their current level. Every year following they'd shrink until, by about 2065, they're almost zero. Initially, each country would be allocated an emissions quota according to how much they currently consume. But this would change over time. America would slash its emissions 90% from its current over-consuming position. Europe too would decrease massively, as would China. But India and Africa would increase until, by about 2025, each human being on the planet would have equal rights to the Earth's resources. Equity is the only option morally, and also practically, as developing countries won't sign up to anything less. The total emissions would then keep decreasing every year, until by 2065 we'll have weaned ourselves off fossil fuels and prevented the worst impacts of climate change. As to how each country divvies up its share to its citizens, there are various options on the table, the most promising of which is individual carbon rationing.
Mr. W.S. Morrison is here to explain.
If, in the course of the war, we are short for a time of this or that article of food, rationing will give everyone, rich and poor alike, an equal share of all that's going.
Under this scheme, everyone in the UK would be allocated an annual carbon allowance.
Stored electronically, rather like a supermarket loyalty card, points would be deducted every time we buy or use non-renewable energy. For example, using electricity to power appliances in the home.
Or travelling somewhere by plane.
Or even buying petrol for your car.
The best way you can help is by rationing yourselves. I'm sure that all of you will buy your fair share.